The galaxy was wide, full of light and life, but hidden inside that beauty were dark corners no one wanted to see. Among the stars, powerful empires traded in many things: minerals, technology, even entire worlds. But one of the darkest trades was the selling of living beings. Many looked away, too afraid or too powerless to stop it. Captain Elias Ward was not the kind of man who looked away. He was human, from Earth, a planet that was still young in galactic terms. Humans had not spread far like other species, and their fleets were small compared to the massive armadas of alien empires. Yet Elias carried something that no law or weapon could measure: his will. He traveled alone in his ship, the Horizons. Call, a sturdy but modest vessel. Most who saw it would think it nothing more than a wandering trader's ship. That was how Elias liked it. He stayed away from big battles and politics, but fate had a way of dragging him where he never planned to be. One evening, while charting a new star system near the galactic rim, his scanners picked up something unusual. There was a station hidden behind a dead moon, shielded from normal sensors. At first, he thought it was abandoned. But as his ship drifted closer, the truth appeared. Ships were docking and leaving, carrying cargo containers too large for normal trade. Elias frowned. He had heard whispers before, tales of markets, where entire species were sold like objects. Most dismissed those stories as rumors, but now, staring at the station, he realized the stories were true. His first thought was to leave. What could one man do against a whole cartel? His ship carried no heavy weapons, and his crew was only himself. But then, through his long-range cameras, he saw something that rooted him to his chair. Inside one of the docking bays, cages were being rolled out, and inside those cages were living beings. Their forms were different, some tall with silver skin, others small with glowing eyes, some humanoid, some not. But all of them carried the same look in their eyes: despair. Elias sat back, silent. His heart beat heavier with every passing second. He knew the smart choice was to turn away. No one would blame him. Humans had no duty here, but he remembered something his father once told him. Strength is not just what you hold in your hands, son. Strength is what you refuse to ignore. He whispered to himself, I can't just leave them. Carefully, he adjusted his ship's course and cloaked his signal. The Horizon's call was small and quiet. With luck, the cartel would not notice him. He circled around the far side of the station, scanning for weak points. Most of the docking ports were guarded, but one section near the lower decks showed irregular power readings. It was probably an old maintenance bay, rarely used. Elias decided that was his way in. He prepared his gear. He had no heavy armor, no military rifle, only a lightweight suit, a plasma pistol, and a sharp mind. What he lacked in power, he would make up in stealth and planning. He studied the station's rotations, the security patterns, and the cargo schedules. Hours passed, but he waited patiently. Patience was one of humanity's hidden strengths, and Elias used it well. Finally, the moment came. A small cargo ship undocked, leaving the maintenance bay exposed for a short window. Elias slipped his ship into place, magnetized it to the surface, and cut a hole through the thin hull. With silent steps, he entered the station. The inside smelled of metal, oil, and fear. The halls were dim, with only faint lights guiding the way. He kept close to the shadows, moving carefully. Voices echoed in the distance, alien tongues trading deals, laughing, shouting. Elias gritted his teeth. He knew what kind of laughter that was. He moved deeper, his scanner showing life signs below. Soon, he reached a large chamber, and there he saw them, rows of cages. Dozens of beings sat inside, their eyes dull, their bodies weak from mistreatment. Elias felt anger rise in his chest, but he forced it down. Anger without control would only get him killed. He needed a plan. Among the cages, one figure caught his attention. A tall alien woman with crystalline blue skin sat near the front. Unlike the others, her eyes were sharp, watching everything, studying. She saw Elias hiding in the shadows. For a brief moment, her eyes widened, but she did not cry out. Instead, she gave the smallest nod as if to say, "I see you. I will wait." Elias tapped his wrist console, sending a silent code to his ship. Small drones detached from the Horizon's call and flew into the station through the same entry point. They were simple machines, but armed with tools that could cut through locks. Quietly, he slipped near the cages and whispered, "Stay calm. I'm here to help." Some prisoners looked at him in disbelief. Others shook their heads, afraid. But the blue-skinned woman whispered back, her voice low but steady, "You are human." "Why would you risk this?" Elias gave a thin smile. "Because no one else will." The drones buzzed softly as they went to work. Sparks flickered as the locks were cut. One by one, cages opened. The captives stared in shock, unable to believe. Their freedom was so close, but freedom never came easy. An alarm blared. Red lights flashed across the chamber. The cartel had noticed. Heavy footsteps thundered in the halls as guards rushed toward the room. Elias raised his pistol, standing in front of the prisoners. His voice was firm, stronger than his small frame suggested. "Stay behind me. We're getting out." The first alien guards burst into the chamber. They were tall, armored, carrying rifles that glowed with lethal energy. They sneered when they saw him, laughing at the sight of one lone human standing in their way. But they didn't understand humans. Elias fired first, his shots precise and quick. One guard fell. Another stumbled. The freed captives grabbed fallen weapons, joining the fight. For the first time in years, they fought not as slaves, but as beings with hope. The blue-skinned woman moved beside Elias, using her crystalline body to shield others from fire. Elias covered her, each of them moving as if they had fought together before. The battle was short, but fierce. At last, the guards lay defeated, the alarms still echoing. Elias knew more would come, but he also knew one thing. This was only the beginning. He turned to the freed captives, his eyes steady. "We don't have much time. Follow me if you want freedom." And without waiting for thanks, Elias led them out of the chamber, deeper into the uncertain path of escape. In that moment, a spark lit in the galaxy, a spark born from one human's choice to act. The echo of alarms chased them down the narrow metal halls of the cartel station. Red lights blinked above, warning sirens howled like angry beasts, and the smell of burned plasma still clung to the air. Elias Ward kept moving, his steps fast but controlled. Behind him, the freed captives followed, stumbling at first but gaining courage with every step. His wrist console showed the map he had quickly copied from the station's data lines. There was a service tunnel leading toward the outer hull. If they could reach it, his drones could cut an exit, and the Horizon's call could pull them out. But time was their enemy. "Keep close," Elias said in a steady voice. His words were short, but they gave the frightened captives something to hold on to. The crystalline-skinned woman walked near him. Even in fear, she carried herself with strength. Her glowing blue eyes scanned ahead, watching for danger. "More guards will come," she said softly. "The cartel never lets anyone escape." Elias gave her a quick glance. "Then we won't. Give them the chance." They moved past crates stacked high, each one marked with alien symbols. Elias didn't want to imagine what was inside. Maybe weapons, maybe more captives. But right now he had one mission: get these people out. Suddenly, heavy footsteps pounded behind them. A squad of cartel soldiers appeared at the far end of the hall, rifles raised. Elias cursed under his breath and dove behind a crate, pulling the blue-skinned woman with him. "Down!" he shouted to the others. Blasts of energy lit the corridor, bolts smashing into the walls, sparks flying. The captives screamed and pressed against the floor. Elias leaned out, firing back with calm precision. 2 guards fell, but the rest advanced. He needed something more. His eyes darted to the crates around them. A small label caught his attention. Fuel cells. Dangerous cargo. Elias smiled grimly. "Cover your ears," he told the woman beside him. She frowned but obeyed. Elias pulled a small grenade from his belt, not a weapon, but a tool designed to overload circuits. He tossed it toward the crates. The blast was not huge, but it was enough. The fuel cells ignited, erupting into a chain of fire and smoke. The hallway shook, flames filling the space. The cartel soldiers were thrown off their feet, their weapons clattering uselessly. The captives gasped, some in shock, some in awe. The blue-skinned woman stared at Elias with wide eyes. "You could have destroyed us all." Elias shrugged, his face calm. "Sometimes you gamble when the odds are bad. That's how humans survive." They hurried through the smoke, coughing, but alive. The tunnel ahead was close now, but Elias knew the cartel would keep coming. He needed to move faster. As they turned a corner, Elias stopped. His scanner showed another life sign ahead, alone, locked inside a storage bay. He hesitated. He had already saved many, but every second they delayed meant greater danger. The woman noticed his pause. "What is it?" "Another prisoner," Elias answered. The group behind them groaned in fear. One shouted, "We must go! If we stay, we die!" Elias looked at them. He could see their fear, their desperation. But he also knew what it meant, to abandon someone. Slowly, he shook his head. No, no one gets left behind. Without waiting, he rushed to the bay doors and forced them open with his wrist console. Inside, in the dim light, sat a small alien figure chained to the wall. She looked younger, her body thin, her skin pale from lack of light. At the sound of the door, she looked up with wide, terrified eyes. When she saw Elias, she flinched back. "Don't hurt me," she whispered. Elias knelt, his voice soft. "I'm here to free you." Her chains fell with a spark as his drone cut through them. She blinked, confused, then burst into tears of relief. Elias lifted her gently to her feet. The other captives watched in silence. They had thought escape was impossible, but this human kept proving them wrong. He risked everything for strangers. Back in the hall, the blue-skinned woman looked at him with new respect. "You risk yourself for one you don't even know." "Why?" Elias met her gaze, his voice calm but firm. "Because freedom means nothing if it isn't for everyone." With that, they pressed on. The service tunnel was just ahead, a long, narrow shaft leading toward the outer hull. Elias ordered his drones to cut an exit. Sparks flew as the metal wall glowed from the heat of their lasers. Behind them, shouts, and heavy boots echoed closer and closer. The younger alien girl clung to Elias's arm, trembling. He gave her a reassuring nod. "Almost there. Just a little more." Finally, the wall gave way with a crash. Cold starlight poured in. The horizons. Call hovered outside, its docking ramp extended. Elias waved the captives forward. "Go!" he shouted. One by one, they climbed into the ship. The blue-skinned woman was among the last, her sharp eyes never leaving Elias as if trying to understand him. He stayed behind, covering their retreat, firing at the guards who rounded the corner. Bolts of energy whizzed past him, striking the walls. He ducked, returned fire, and then leapt onto the ramp as the last of the captives scrambled aboard. "Seal the hatch," Elias ordered. The Horizon's call pulled away from the station, engines roaring. Behind them, cartel ships scrambled to give chase. But Elias had prepared for this. He punched in a command, and the charges he had planted earlier in the maintenance bay exploded. The station shook violently, alarms echoing through the void. The cartel ships swerved to protect their base, giving Elias the time he needed to escape. When at last the stars calmed around them and the enemy signals faded, silence filled the ship. The captives sat in the cargo hold, staring at the human, who had risked everything for them. The small girl he had rescued clutched his sleeve and whispered, "Why did you come for us?" Elias looked at her, then at all of them. His eyes were tired but steady. "Because someone had to, and if not me, then who?" The words sank deep. None of them had ever heard such simple conviction before. The blue-skinned woman stepped forward. She stood tall, her crystalline body catching the faint light of the ship. "I am Soraya," she said, her voice strong. "I was a scientist once before the cartel took me. Today you gave me back my freedom. I will not forget this human." Others murmured their names, one by one. Each of them looked at Elias not with fear or suspicion, but with respect and something more, hope. Elias nodded, feeling the weight of their eyes. He had started this without a plan, only following his heart. But now he realized something greater. This was not just a rescue. This was the beginning of something larger. He turned toward the stars, his voice quiet but filled with determination. "One by one, we'll set them free. And one day, the cartel will have nothing left to sell." The captives exchanged glances. In that moment, a bond was formed, not forced, not demanded, but chosen. For the first time in years, they believed in something again, and it began with one human, refusing to walk away. The horizon's call drifted quietly through the dark between stars. The rescued captives sat in the ship's cargo hold, still shaken, still uncertain, but no longer chained. Some whispered to one another in their own languages, some sat silently, staring into space, and others simply closed their eyes, trying to believe that their nightmare was finally over. Elias Ward stood at the edge of the hold, arms folded. He studied them carefully, noting the mix of exhaustion and hope in their faces. They were strangers from different worlds, but now they were bound together by one thing: freedom. Soraya, the crystalline-skinned woman, approached him. Her tall form gleamed faintly under the ship's lights, her eyes sharp and thoughtful. "They look to you," she said softly. "You freed them. They see you as their protector." Elias shook his head. "I'm just one man with a ship. Protector? No. They'll have to protect each other now." Soraya tilted her head. "And yet you could have turned away. You risked your life for those you did not know. That is not the way of most species in this galaxy." Elias gave a faint smile. "Maybe that's what makes humans different." She studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Different, yes, and perhaps dangerous to those who rule through fear." Before Elias could answer, a weak voice spoke from behind. The small alien girl he had freed in the storage bay stepped forward. She was still pale, still trembling, but her eyes held a quiet courage. "Where will we go now?" she asked. The question settled heavily in the air. The captives stared at Elias, waiting. He exhaled slowly. "First, somewhere safe. Then, we'll see." But he knew in his heart there would be no safety for long. The cartel would not forget. They would send hunters. They would put a price on his head, maybe even on the freed captives as well. The horizon's call soon reached a small hidden asteroid field on the edge of uncharted space. Elias guided the ship into a hollow cave within one of the larger rocks, masking their signal. It was not much, but it would give them time to rest. The captives spread out, stretching their bodies and breathing freely without fear of guards shouting at them. For the first time in years, some even smiled faintly. Elias, however, did not rest. He worked at his console, scanning communications across nearby systems. As he expected, reports were already spreading. Unknown raider attacks cartel station. Prisoners missing. Large bounty issued, he muttered under his breath. That didn't take long. Soraya stood behind him, reading the reports over his shoulder. They will not stop hunting us. You know this. Elias leaned back, rubbing his eyes. I know. Which means we can't just run. We need to fight smart. Her crystalline features hardened. Fight? With what? You are one man, and these others? She looked at the freed captives, many still weak and thin from their time in cages. They are not soldiers. Elias turned to her, his expression firm. Maybe not soldiers, but survivors. Survivors can be stronger than anyone else if they stand together. Soraya was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. Perhaps there is truth in that. That night, if time could even be called night in the endless dark, Elias gathered them all in the cargo hold. He stood before them, speaking plainly. You all know the cartel will come for us. If you want me to take you to a quiet world where you can hide, I will. But if you're willing, we can do more than just survive. We can make sure no one else suffers what you suffered, the captives whispered among themselves. Fear was still strong, but so was the spark of hope. One by one, some began to step forward. The first was Soraya. I will not run. I was a scientist once, builder of machines for peace. The cartel turned my work into weapons. But if I stand with you, perhaps I can use my knowledge to undo what they have done. Then came another, an alien warrior with scaled skin and piercing yellow eyes. His body was scarred from battles long past. I fought for the cartel once before they turned on me. They chained me like the others. Now I will fight against them. My strength is yours. A third figure spoke, a healer with soft silver hands that glowed faintly. I tended wounds in secret, even when my masters forbade it. If we are to fight, then you will need someone to keep you alive. I will serve in that way. The small girl who had clung to Elias earlier stepped forward last. Her voice was quiet, but strong. I cannot fight, not yet, but I can learn, and I will not leave the one who saved me. One by one, the captives chose. Not all of them. Some still wished only for freedom and safety. But enough. Enough to form the start of something new. Elias listened, his heart heavy, yet proud. He had not wanted to be a leader, but now he realized leadership had chosen him. He nodded firmly. Then we'll do it together. Not as slaves, not as prisoners, but as free people who refuse to bow. The next days were filled with preparation. Soraya repaired the ship with her sharp mind, upgrading its systems beyond anything Elias could have done alone. The warrior, whose name was Kor, trained the others in basic defense. The healer, Lyra, tended to wounds and gave strength to those still weak. Even the young girl, named Kayla, practiced at the console, learning how to scan and watch for threats. Elias moved among them, teaching, guiding, encouraging. He was not the strongest, not the smartest, not the most skilled, but he had something none of the others had, the unshakable belief that they could win no matter the odds. And that belief spread like fire through the group. One evening, as the horizon's call floated silently in the asteroid cave, Soraya stood with Elias at the viewing window. The stars stretched endlessly before them, cold and bright. You have changed them, she said quietly. Elias shook his head. They changed themselves. All I did was give them a chance. She looked at him for a long time. You are different, human. You fight without chains, but also without reward. The galaxy will not understand this, and that is why they will fear you. Elias gave a small, tired smile. Let them fear. We're not here to be understood. We're here to make sure no one else lives in chains. Behind them, the crew, the once broken, now rising survivors, slept and prepared for what lay ahead. And in the shadows of the galaxy, a new resistance was quietly born. The asteroid field had been safe for a time, but safety never lasted long in the galaxy. Elias Ward knew it. Soraya knew it. Even the others, though still new to freedom, felt the quiet pressure of danger pressing closer every day. The cartel had lost slaves and pride when Elias freed the captives. Such groups did not forgive. They ruled through fear, and to keep that fear alive, they needed to show the galaxy what happened to anyone who dared defy them. And now, they were coming. The warning arrived in the form of a coded signal intercepted by Kayla, the young girl who had begun training at the ship's console. Her voice trembled when she called out, "Captain, I picked up a message. It says hunters are being sent. They know where we are." Elias stood quickly, crossing the control deck to look at the screen. The signal was faint, but the message was clear. The cartel had dispatched ships, fast, well-armed, and merciless. He placed a steady hand on Kayla's shoulder. "Good work. You caught it early. That gives us a chance." Kayla nodded, trying to look brave, though fear still lingered in her wide eyes. Soraya stepped beside Elias, her crystalline form glowing faintly in the light of the consoles. "We cannot fight a fleet. If they come with full force, this ship will not survive." Elias agreed silently. His ship was sturdy but not built for large battles. But running was not the only option. He had learned something important about humans and survivors alike. Sometimes, the best way to fight giants was to strike from the shadows. He gathered everyone in the cargo hold. Kor, the scarred warrior, stood with arms crossed. Lyra, the silver-handed healer, stayed near those still. Too weak to fight, Soraya observed with her calculating gaze, while Kayla clutched a data pad nervously. "The cartel is on their way," Elias began. His voice was calm, even though the news was heavy. "They won't stop until they catch us, but we're not helpless. We have skills. We have each other, and we know something they don't: how to use the shadows against them." Kor's yellow eyes narrowed. "What are you planning, human?" Elias tapped the star chart on the wall. "There's a trade route nearby. The cartel will have to pass through it to reach us. If we strike first, on ground of our choosing, we can weaken them. Not destroy, maybe, but enough to make them hesitate," the survivors whispered among themselves. To fight the cartel seemed impossible. Yet when they looked at Elias, they saw certainty in his eyes. He was not fearless, but he was determined, and that gave them courage. Soraya finally spoke. "Then we prepare. I can reprogram the drones for combat. They will not last long, but they can distract the hunters." Kor grinned, showing sharp teeth. "And I will be ready to crush anyone who dares board us." Lyra sighed but nodded. "Then I will make sure your reckless bravery does not kill you all." Even Kayla raised her hand timidly. I can jam their signals, at least for a while. If they cannot call for reinforcements, we may have a chance." Elias looked at them one by one. These were no longer helpless captives. They were allies. A crew. He gave a short nod. "Then let's make the cartel regret ever crossing us." The trap was set days later. The Horizon's call waited in the shadow of a broken moon, its engines quiet, its signal hidden. The asteroid belt stretched around them, a maze of rocks and drifting debris. Kor checked his weapon again, gripping it like an old friend. Soraya's drones floated silently, their tiny lights blinking faintly. Lyra prepared a small med station in the corner, though she prayed she would not need it. Kyla sat at the console, her hands shaking slightly but steadying with each breath. And Elias? He stood at the center, calm, watching the stars. Then the hunters arrived, 3 cartel ships slipped into the system, sleek and sharp like blades. Their engines glowed red, their weapons primed. They moved with the arrogance of predators certain of their kill. "Targets confirmed," Kayla whispered, her voice tense. "They are scanning. They don't see us yet." Elias gave the order. "Wait! Wait!" The ships moved closer, their formation tight. Then, when they reached the center of the belt, Elias raised his hand. "Now!" Kayla triggered the jamming. Signal. The hunters' scanners blinked wildly, their comms filled with static. At the same time, Soraya's drones shot forward, firing bursts of plasma at their flanks. The cartel ships reeled in surprise, turning their weapons toward the tiny attackers. That was the moment Elias had been waiting for. The Horizon's call roared to life, engines flaring as it darted from the shadows. Its forward cannons spat fire, striking one hunter across its side. The smaller human ship should not have stood a chance, yet its attack was swift and precise, striking where it hurt most. The battle exploded across the asteroid belt. Hunters fired beams that tore rocks apart, sending fragments spinning into the void. The Horizon's call weaved between them, using the asteroids as cover. Soraya guided the drones into the enemy's blind spots, forcing them to waste fire. Core roared from the weapons bay, launching blasts that shook the hunters' shields, but the cartel was relentless. One hunter locked onto them, its cannons glowing bright. The blast struck the Horizon's call, shaking the entire ship. Sparks burst from the consoles. Kayla screamed but kept working, forcing the jamming signal to hold. Elias gritted his teeth steady at the controls. "Hold together, old girl. Just a little longer." The battle raged on. One drone after another fell, but not before distracting. The hunters long enough for Elias to strike again. He aimed carefully and fired a full volley into the engines of the nearest hunter. The explosion lit the belt like a second sun. One enemy ship was gone. The remaining 2 circled, angered now. Determined. Their combined fire slammed into the Horizon's call. The ship groaned, warning lights flashing. Lyra rushed to the wounded as panels burst. Soraya grabbed Elias's shoulder. "We cannot take more hits!" Elias's jaw tightened. "Then we—" "End it now." He pushed the ship forward, weaving dangerously close to the asteroids. The cartel hunters chased, their shots carving trails through stone and dust. Elias led them into a narrow canyon of rock, a path only a skilled pilot would dare enter. Core clutched the railing, growling. "You'll kill us all, human!" "Trust me," Elias said through gritted teeth. The hunters followed. Their larger ships scraped against the walls, too big for the path. One slammed into a rock, bursting apart in a cloud of fire. The other pulled back, but it was too late. Elias spun the Horizon's call out of the canyon, flipped the ship, and fired everything it had left. The last hunter's shields failed, and the ship broke apart in a final burning explosion. Silence followed. The Horizon's call floated in, the debris field, scarred but alive. Inside, the crew sat in stunned quiet, their hearts pounding. Finally, Kayla whispered, We won?" Elias leaned back in his chair, sweat dripping down his forehead. His voice was steady. "No, we survived." "Winning comes later." Soraya placed a hand on the console, her crystalline eyes glowing. "But the cartel will learn. Humans do not run. They fight. And with you, we fight too." Around them, the crew straightened. They were no longer only survivors. They were something more. Fighters bound by choice, not by chains. And though the cartel still loomed across the galaxy for the first time, the hunters had tasted fear. The Horizon's call floated in the dark void, its hull scorched from the last battle. Inside, the crew worked silently, repairing panels, adjusting wires, and treating burns. They had survived the cartel hunters, but Elias knew survival was not enough. Sooner or later, the cartel would return with more ships, stronger forces, and greater anger. Running from them forever was not a choice. As Elias studied the galaxy map glowing on his console, his jaw tightened. The cartel had a main hub not far from their position, a station larger than a city, where slaves were kept and trades were made. It was heavily guarded, impossible for one small ship to destroy. But if they could strike it, even a little, they could hurt the cartel in ways that mattered. Soraya stood beside him, her crystalline body reflecting the map's light. "You are thinking of attacking?" she said quietly. Elias did not deny it. Every cage they hold is another life waiting to be freed. If we wait, more will suffer. We hit them now, not to destroy, but to show them they can bleed. Kor, the scarred warrior, overheard and grinned fiercely. "At last, the human speaks like a soldier. I will fight. I will crush them with my own hands." Lyra, the healer, frowned. "We are not an army. This ship can only take so much. One wrong move, and none of us will live." Elias turned to her, his eyes calm but sharp. "I know the risk, but if we do nothing, the cartel wins without firing another shot. And if we succeed, even a little, we'll light a fire that others can follow." The crew fell into silence, considering his words. Then Kayla, the youngest among them, raised her hand timidly. "If we go, we can save more like me, more who are still trapped." Her soft voice carried more weight than any argument. Elias nodded firmly. "Then it's decided. We strike." The plan was simple, though dangerous. Soraya had hacked old blueprints of the cartel hub. The outer defenses were nearly impenetrable, but there was a cargo section that received constant traffic. If they slipped inside disguised as a trading ship, they could land unnoticed. Once inside, they would split up. Soraya would disable the station's power grid. Kor would lead the fight against guards. Lyra would stay with the wounded. Kyla would handle communications, and Elias would free as many captives as possible. If they succeeded, the slaves would escape, and the cartel would be humiliated before the galaxy. If they failed, none of them would leave alive. Days later, the Horizon's call approached the hub. The station filled the view screen, massive and cold, its lights stretching like a floating city. Countless ships moved in and out, carrying goods, weapons, and stolen lives. Kayla's hands shook as she transmitted a false code. For a tense moment, silence followed. Then the station replied, "Docking approved, proceed." The crew exhaled in relief, but Elias kept his eyes on the station. "Stay sharp. This is only the beginning." The ship slid into a docking bay. The doors closed behind them, sealing them inside enemy territory. Elias stood, gathering the crew. "Remember the plan. Move fast, stay quiet when you can, fight when you must, and no matter what, get the captives out." They nodded. Fear shone in their eyes, but so did courage. The docking ramp lowered. The crew stepped into the dim halls of the station. Around them, workers moved crates, guards patrolled, and machines hummed. At first, no one paid attention. Just another cargo ship, just another delivery. Soraya led the way to the power grid, her sharp mind already calculating which circuits to overload. Kor gripped his weapon, his muscles tense, waiting for the fight he knew would come. Lyra carried her small kit ready to heal. Kayla stayed close to Elias, clutching her datapad tightly. They moved deeper into the station, past rows of locked doors. Behind some of those doors, voices whispered, cried, and begged. "Prisoners." Elias clenched his fists. Every step hardened. His resolve. At last, Soraya broke off, disappearing down a maintenance tunnel. Kor nodded once and vanished into another path. Elias and Kayla pressed forward, reaching the detention block. The door slid open, revealing a wide hall filled with cages. Dozens of eyes turned toward them, eyes full of despair, just as Elias remembered from before. Kayla gasped softly. "So many!" Elias raised his wrist console. His drones flew out, buzzing toward the locks. Sparks flashed as cages began to open. Prisoners blinked in disbelief, unsure if this was real. "Come on," Elias said firmly. "You're free now. Move." Slowly, cautiously, the captives stepped out. Then faster, hope spreading like fire. But the fire also drew attention. The alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Guards stormed into the hall, weapons ready. Elias pulled Kayla behind a crate and fired back, his pistol steady. Prisoners ducked and scattered, some grabbing weapons from fallen guards to fight beside him. At the same time, Soraya's plan took effect. Across the station, lights flickered and died as power grids overloaded. Machines whined, shields failed, and doors locked, open. Chaos spread everywhere. Kor's roar echoed through the halls as he fought squad after squad, his scars burning with old fury. He fought not for himself, but for every chain he had once worn. Lyra dragged wounded captives to safety, her silver hands glowing as she healed burns and sealed wounds. Kayla worked desperately at her console, jamming signals so the cartel could not call for backup. Her young face was pale with fear, but her hands moved quickly, steady with determination. And Elias, he fought at the front, never backing down. He fired, shielded captives, and shouted orders. He was one man, but to the freed prisoners, he looked like an army. The battle raged through the station. Explosions shook the walls as systems collapsed. Freed captives poured through the halls, some weak, some strong, all running toward freedom. At last, Soraya rejoined them, her body cracked but still standing. "The grid is down. Their ships cannot launch. Now is the time." Elias nodded. "Everyone to the docks. Move!" They rushed together, leading hundreds of freed prisoners through the chaos. Guards tried to block them, but Kor and the others held the line. The Horizon's call waited with its ramp open, ready to take as many as it could. But there were too many. Elias knew his ship could not carry them all. His heart ached, but Soraya gripped his shoulder. "Look!" Beyond their ship, more doors opened. Other vessels, their crews inspired by the uprising, had turned against the cartel. Some were smugglers, some traders, but all saw the chance to stand with the rebels. They opened their bays, welcoming prisoners aboard. For the first time, the cartel's own station had become a place of rebellion. The last push came at the docking bay. A squad of elite guards blocked the path, weapons heavy, armor thick. Elias stood at the front, his pistol low but his voice strong. "You can try to stop us," he called, "but know this. The more you chain, the more will rise. Today is only the beginning." The guards charged. Elias fired. Kor slammed into them like a storm. Soraya's drones exploded against their armor. Prisoners fought with stolen weapons. And in the chaos, the captives poured past, filling ships, escaping chains. The Horizon's call was the last to lift off, engines screaming. Through the viewport, Elias saw the cartel hub burning, its power grid shattered, its slaves gone. They had not destroyed it, but they had broken its spirit. Inside the ship, the freed captives cheered. Kayla laughed through her tears. Lyra collapsed in exhaustion but smiled. Kor sat with blood on his armor, proud. Soraya stood tall, her crystalline body glowing. Elias sat quietly in the captain's chair, watching the stars. He knew the war was not over. The cartel would rebuild stronger and angrier. But now, across the galaxy, people had seen something. They had forgotten hope, and hope was more dangerous to tyrants than any weapon. The Horizon's call drifted through the stars, silent except for the hum of its engines. Inside, the crew sat together in the common room, tired but alive. They had done the impossible, freed hundreds from the cartel's grip, and struck a blow against the darkest power in the galaxy. For the first time in weeks, laughter filled the air. Freed captives, now passengers, shared food and stories. Some cried with relief, others sang softly in their own languages. The ship, once quiet and heavy with fear, now carried the sound of life. Elias sat in the corner, watching. He smiled faintly, but his mind was heavy. He knew this victory was only the beginning. The cartel would not forgive or forget. Soraya noticed his silence. She moved closer, her crystalline body shimmering faintly. "You should rest," she told him. "I can't," Elias said softly. "Not yet. Too much ahead." "You think too far," Soraya replied. "Look around. For them, this day is everything. You gave them freedom. Let yourself feel that, if only for a moment." Elias looked again at the faces around him. Kayla was laughing with children her age, her fear replaced with joy. Lyra was tending to the wounded, her silver hands glowing gently. Kor sat among other warriors, teaching them how to hold stolen weapons. For the first time, they all looked like more than survivors. They looked like a family. Elias exhaled slowly. "You're right," he admitted. The following day, the Horizons call landed on a quiet planet in neutral space. Its surface was covered in green plains and silver rivers, far from cartel patrols. Here, the freed captives could rest and decide their futures. The ship's ramp lowered, and the people stepped out into fresh air. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by freedom. Others simply stood in silence, gazing at the sky without chains. Kayla walked beside Elias, her eyes wide. "It feels unreal," she whispered. "It is real," Elias said firmly. "No one will cage you again." Kayla looked up at him, her expression soft. "Because of you." Elias shook his head. "Because of all of us. No one wins freedom alone." Days passed on the planet. The crew helped build shelters, share food, and plan what came next. Many of the freed captives wanted to stay and start new lives. Others wished to travel to their home worlds. And some, inspired by Elias, wanted to fight back against the cartel. One night, the leaders of the freed group gathered around a fire with Elias and his crew. They spoke of forming a resistance, small at first, but growing with time. The galaxy was large, and the cartel had enemies everywhere. If those enemies united, the balance could shift. A grizzled elder, once a scholar, said, "You lit the spark. Now the fire will spread." Elias nodded slowly. "If you stand, I'll stand with you. But know this, the road ahead is hard. The cartel will not fall quickly. Many more battles will come." The elder smiled faintly. "Then let them come. Better to die free than live chained." The others agreed, voices firm. The resistance was born that night, not with armies or weapons, but with a promise shared under the stars. Later, Elias walked alone by the riverside. The stars reflected on the water, bright and endless. He thought of Earth, far away, where he once dreamed of adventure, but never of war. He had not asked for this path, yet it had found him. Soraya joined him, silent for a moment before speaking. "You are troubled." Elias gave a tired laugh. "Do you ever not notice?" "Rarely," she said with a faint smile. He sighed. "I keep thinking, what if I fail? What if the cartel crushes us? What if all this hope dies with me?" Soraya looked at him steadily. "Hope does not belong to one person. It is carried by many. If you fall, another will rise. That is the truth you must believe." Elias stared at the river, then nodded. "Then I'll keep walking, for as long as I can." The next morning, the crew prepared the Horizon's call for departure. Many of the freed captives stayed behind to build their new home, but some chose to join Elias. Their numbers were small, yet each one carried fierce determination. Kayla approached Elias shyly. "Can I stay with you? I don't want to hide anymore. I want to fight, like you." Elias studied her. She was young, but her spirit was strong. "If you stay," he said, "it won't be easy. There will be danger every day." Kayla nodded, firmly. "I know, but I'd rather fight beside you than run alone." Elias smiled faintly. "Then welcome to the crew." Kor slapped Kayla on the shoulder, nearly knocking her over. "Good. We will make a warrior of you yet." She laughed nervously, but her eyes shone with pride. As the horizon's call lifted into the sky once more, the people below waved, their voices raised in farewell. They were no longer slaves. They were free, and they had hope for the future. Inside, the ship. The crew gathered in the command deck. Elias sat in the captain's chair, his hands steady on the controls. Soraya stood at his side, Kor checked his weapons, Lyra adjusted medical supplies, and Kayla watched the stars with wide eyes. Elias spoke, his voice calm but strong. "We've made enemies, but we've also made something greater, friends, allies, hope. The cartel will come after us, but they'll find we're not running anymore. We'll keep fighting. We'll keep freeing those in chains. Until one day, the galaxy belongs to its people again, not to tyrants." The crew nodded, their faces set with resolve. The ship surged forward into the starry dark, leaving the green planet behind. Ahead lay danger, battles, and sacrifices. But also ahead lay the chance to change the galaxy. And for Elias, that was enough. The horizon's call became more than a ship. It became a symbol whispered from world to world, a story told in quiet places and loud marketplaces alike. A human who freed the chained, a crew who defied the powerful, a spark that turned into fire. Everywhere, people began to rise. Small rebellions broke chains. Cartel patrols met resistance where before there had been silence. The balance of power shifted, not because of armies, but because ordinary people believed again. And always, at the center of the stories, was the captain and his strange, loyal crew. Soraya, the crystalline tactician, Kor, the scarred warrior, Lyra, the gentle healer, Kyla, the brave youth, and Elias, the man who refused to let hope die. The galaxy was vast, the enemies strong, the future uncertain. But one truth remained. So long as the horizon's call sailed among the stars, freedom had a voice.